Hey everyone, and welcome to another other talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. This is the talk we do every third Sunday morning of every month, and thank you for joining us. We hope this is something you can make it to if it's at a time that's more convenient for you, because we are trying to make sure we accommodate everyone as best as we can. Alright, I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle, along with
the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us again. Mushtaq, would you like to do the spiel?
I shall do the spiel. So, if you're watching us on YouTube, welcome. And if this is your first time, you're doubly welcome. We would ask if you would be so kind as to hit the like button on this video. We get a couple hundred people watching, and we would like to know if you like it. So, and it helps us, to tell you the truth. It gets us up in the YouTube algorithm, which is important because it's the only way that we can get control of our channel for certain things. YouTube forces us to have commercials now, whether we are monetized or not. And so we are working very hard to get up to 1,000 subscribers so we can join in on the YouTube Partners Program, so we can turn off the damn ads, which we don't like.
Yeah,
we don't want you to have ads.
You don't need these ads. You don't
No,
need them. We don't want them.
Yeah, and most of the people who want to advertise on our channel are terrible. They're horrible human beings. I am horrified and disgusted at what I've seen for ads. Don't buy anything from them. If that doesn't get us demonetized, nothing will.
Good job.
Thank you. We would be really grateful if you subscribe to our channel. It won't hurt you, I guarantee it. We don't spam you with lots of stuff. You know, we do 1 or 2 videos a week. And you'll get notified of them if you hit the notify button, which you can also do. And we would love to have you join our happy little family here.
Yep, so we have a lot of really wonderful people who have become part of our community and who are contributing in ways that they probably don't even realize, you know, how much enriches our experience here. So yeah, I just want to put that out there.
Subscribe to the channel. Go down in the description and go to our Facebook page and group and ask to be let into the group. Answer the questions, because if you don't answer the questions, you don't get in. It's our way of protecting everybody from bots.
Yeah, gross. And, you know, trolls and all that stuff.
Yep.
So if you'd like to support our work otherwise, you know, we do accept donations to our PayPal, and for fun, we do also sell t-shirts, which have our insignia, I guess we could call it, on it. It's not exactly
our crest,
a logo.
Our coat of arms.
And it doesn't even say Nine-Sided Circle on it. It's really just to share the love, you know, that kind of thing. So
yeah, and it looks incredibly cool.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I have mine right here. I was thinking about wearing it, but maybe later.
It's a little chilly.
Yeah.
We have to get some of those Nine-Sided Circle sweatshirts.
There we go. Yep. Cool. So, there's our spiel. Now to get down to the good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff is you telling us about the retreat.
Okay, I forgot about that. Thank you. So, next month, we are doing our annual retreat. It's going to be for the month of November. So, that's November 1st through, I think, what is it? 30th, yes. And technically, it kind of starts on the 30th of October because we're doing one, like, group meetup session on Zoom to discuss, perhaps, you know, what to expect for the retreat, how to do some of the practices we're going to be doing, the intermittent fasting we're going to be incorporating into it. And of course, everything we invite people to do is voluntary, nothing is mandatory.
Yeah,
But
you get to tailor this retreat
yeah.
to your needs, not ours.
Mm-hmm. And it's free to participate in. I mean, we do ask for a $10 or more donation, but again, that is voluntary. It just
Yeah.
helps us keep the lights on, and yeah, we want it to be again accessible. So, um, in order to participate in that, you can. I will probably put the link in the description actually, so look for that. It's going to be a bit.ly link, and it's for Virtual Retreat 2021. And our theme this year is going to be Know Thyself, knowing yourself. And we look forward to sharing that with you all. Anything you want to add?
It will be great fun.
Yeah. So, um, I think that's all I'd like to, all I have to share about that right now, but I am always open to questions if anybody has them. We will be sending out a packet at some point, so it is important to get on the email list for that. And the way that you do that is by signing up with the link that I mentioned, which again will be in the description. So there you go. All right, so I guess at this point we can leap into our talk today, huh?
Yeah, let's leap into the talk. What are we talking about again?
Today we are talking about what we call the path of continuous practice.
Yes.
Yeah, so what does that mean, Mushtaq?
Well, there are some paths where you set aside time to do your practices. Your practices happen uh, in addition to your life. And in our case, this we don't do it this way. We do our practices for the most part in our life. There are times when, one might sit and meditate for a little while if you have nothing better to do. But one of the things that I hear from people who I work with all the time, especially if you're American, and you all will remain nameless. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who you are, is I don't have enough time. I have to work. I have to take care of the kids. I have to do all of this stuff. And I always look at them and say, so when do you breathe? That is the first question. And that's why the quote is what it is, because our method is founded in breath. And no matter what, you're breathing. If you're not breathing, you don't need any practices anymore. So as long as you're breathing, you can make that action your practice everywhere. It doesn't have to take away from anything that you do. You're working, you stay in your breath. You're relaxing, you stay in your breath. You're playing, you stay in your breath. Now, what we're talking about goes beyond just the breath work, but it starts there. And even right now, every single person listening to this can be aware of your breath. You don't even have to do anything with it. Just put your attention on your breath. You go, oh, there it is. And that's a start. So, once you learn to practice this, and the idea of, oh, I can do this, and it does not take away from paying attention to anything else. As a matter of fact, it can help you pay attention to other things. Early on, I learned that doing my breath practice when I was driving was a really, really good thing. Kept me focused, kept me from getting distracted, and it kept me from getting frustrated when traffic got heavy. So
Yeah, I mean, I tend to use it during, medical situations. I have this thing about needles, but I do find that the breath work does help me not necessarily overcome it, but stay grounded through the experience. So that's just another example.
Yeah. So this is why the first thing that we teach you is what we call the fundamental breath, the exhalation-based attention to breath, shifting from going to going, engaging your abdominal muscles, and creating that pause at the end of the breath. It requires no thought on your part, just a tiny bit of attention. And so today, for all of you guys here, because you're all special, I'm going to give you a little adjunct to that practice that you can do at any time, but when you have a moment to be sitting, try this. This is how you're going to start doing your fundamental breath. The first thing you're going to do is counterintuitively take a big, deep breath in. Pause at the top of that breath, and now use that breath to stretch your lungs, move the air around in your lungs, move your body so you can feel all of the expansion. Do this only as long as it's comfortable, and then exhale using your abdominal muscles. Let everything go out. And you're going to do this 3 times. Do you know why 3 times? Who knows why we do it 3 times? Not 2 times, not 4 times. You could
Any
do it 1 time.
guesses? Aaron says it's the magic number.
Well, yes, it is. It says in the Quran, Allah does love the odd.
And we're pretty
And
odd.
We're
yeah,
hella odd, Nancy, so yes.
yeah, and it was specifically referring to the odd numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was the odd everything. Consider the
Yes,
platypus.
yes. That's
Consider
what
the
I read that.
kangaroo. God loves the odd. So you will notice that Sufi types tend to do everything in odd numbers. It's magical. Not really, but 3 times. So, second time, big, deep in breath. Allow your chest to expand. Now, move the air around, and by doing that, you're kind of just moving your chest. You're stretching everything. You're expanding your lungs. And then exhale. And then one more time. Move the air around in your lungs. Feel where you can stretch out your lungs. It's an interesting sensation when you get it, because it's as if you're going, oh, there
Yeah.
it is.
You
And
can even
then,
feel diaphragm stretches if you kind of
yeah,
move it downward as well. Yep.
yeah. And then exhale, pause, and then relax. Let the air come in. Find that little pause at the top. Exhale. Hold that pause at the bottom for as long as it's comfortable, and then relax. And then exhale. Active exhale. Use the abdominal muscles. Pause at the end, and then relax. You can do that breath all day long. You can do it when you're running. I know this because I do it when I'm running. It changes a little bit, of course, because your oxygen needs change. But that pattern of relaxation to let the air come in, exhalation to let the air go out, and the pause at the bottom for a long time and at the top for just a moment, is something that you can do all day long. If you do that, your body calms. If you had a heart rate monitor on as we were doing this thing, you would see your heart rate going down. Your blood pressure is going to go down. You are generally going to feel better. Your body likes this. And that is the basis of all practice. Thoughts or questions before I continue haranguing you? I mean, telling you all this good stuff?
Haranguing.
Haranguing. I just wanted to use the word. It's hard to. There are some words that are harder to use in conversation than others, and haranguing is one of them.
Yeah. So does anyone want to share how that felt, for instance?
I had a question.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Jonathan.
So my normal breathing is, this is relaxed, my lungs relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And I breathe in actively,
Mm-hmm.
then I relax, and it goes back to the relaxed lung state. Where you were talking about abdominally working
Yeah.
it. Are you saying I should squeeze that last quarter of air out?
Okay, so the lungs are a passive organ. They don't do anything. What you're talking about is using your chest muscles, for the most part, to create a negative pressure in your chest cavity to expand your lungs and suck in air. A lot of people breathe like that. And it's a useful thing if you need extra air, like if you're really exerting yourself and you're creating an oxygen demand. Being able to do that is very useful. But that's not the normal way to breathe. It's just a way to breathe. And if you go to other places in the world, you will see people habitually breathe differently, which is kind of interesting. So, what I'm suggesting is that the lungs are like a sponge. If you actually get a lung, go down to a good butcher and take a look at a sheep's lung or a goat's lung and feel it, it feels like a sponge. And what you're doing is you're using your abdominal muscles, especially the transverse abdominis and the diaphragm, to squeeze the air out of your lungs as if you were squeezing water out of a sponge. And when you relax, it fills up without you having to do anything. There is no work involved in a normal inhalation if you are not exerting yourself. If you're not creating oxygen debt, just that relaxation gives you enough air to be very, very comfortable. And so I'm suggesting that you retrain yourself to this. Because as you may or may not know, every breathing pattern will evoke certain emotional states. You want to have more anxiety? Breathe like this, high in your chest. A few breaths like that, and you'll start feeling anxious, especially if you breathe through your mouth. This is a problem that people are having when they're wearing masks. And everybody's wearing masks these days. Wearing a mask tends to make you want to breathe through your mouth. and breathing through your mouth creates a sense of anxiety. And people are wondering, like, why am I so uncomfortable when I'm wearing this mask? Oh my God, I must be dying. And they literally get panic attacks because they don't know how to breathe with one of these silly paper masks on. I learned early on, when I was first working in hospitals and I had to wear a surgical mask, and I was doing that, and this old charge nurse who was, you know, been around forever leaned over to me and said, "Close your mouth, breathe through your nose." And it was like, oh. So what we want is a pattern of breath that brings us to the natural state. And the pattern of breath that I just described does that. Does that make sense? Or am I completely rambling? Sometimes I can't tell.
Yeah, it's exactly opposite the way I have been breathing.
Yeah.
Active exhale, passive inhale.
Yep. And you wonder why you experience anxiety for no reason.
But it's very common, you know. This isn't, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there are basically 6 pathological breathing patterns. There are probably more than that, but the basic ones are 6. And believe it or not, yeah, intercostal breathing, clavicular breathing, when you're way up breathing up here in your shoulders, I can't even do it. It feels so uncomfortable. They are pathological. They do not produce good things. Now, everybody do this. Find your pulse. You know how to find your pulse? It's like right there. Use 2 fingers, not your thumb, and find the radial artery. Now, I want you to take in a huge breath and hold it, and pressurize it a little bit. Like that. You notice how your pulse starts going up? Now, push the air out using your abdominal muscles. Pause at the bottom of the exhale. You notice how your pulse just slowed down? And relax. That's how important your breath is. If you are constantly pressurizing, you are constantly raising your pulse and blood pressure. And when you're doing this, you're pressurizing. If you are using the exhale-based breath, you are actively lowering your blood pressure and pulse, which in most people is a good thing. I mean, yeah, there are some people who have chronically low blood pressure and they tend to pass out when they stand up, but this is not that. Did everybody get that sensation of how the pulse speeds up and slows down?
And you can kind of feel it in your body as well. Like I felt it in my neck actually. So.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the other good place to, the carotid pulse is another good one.
That works a little better for me personally,
Yeah.
So someone else
I'm just,
feel that way.
it goes back to the hospital thing. You tend to not shove your fingers up into somebody's neck unless they're unconscious.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so as a tip Aaron offers, finding that rest/pause at the bottom, that's the bottom of the breath, where you kind of let yourself just chill. He says that made a difference, a big difference in his general breathing pattern. So. Cool.
And also, if you are a shooter of firearms or an archer, you use this in order to know when to release or fire. If I am shooting a rifle, I'm here and I exhale, pause at the end of the exhale, and then I gently squeeze the trigger. If I am shooting an arrow, which I frankly prefer to rifles, I have my draw, and I exhale, then I release. I do this because I use a thumb draw, what they call the Asiatic draw. When you have a ring on your thumb and you catch the string. It's a much better way than the old European three finger, I think, for me.
So it could be said that this is good for any kind of precision
Yes.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, I have noticed that when I'm doing precision work on something, you know, I'm doing a small carving or something like that, I will exhale, make the cut, then inhale.
Surgeons even, true.
Yeah. I would have asked my surgeon about that, except that I was asleep at the time.
Well, thankfully you woke up.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts?
So when we take a pause at the end of the exhale, so I think there is some carbon dioxide level goes up, so it has to do with some relaxation we feel in the body.
Yeah, and there is this effect. It's called the Bohr effect, named after Christian Bohr, the doctor, not Niels Bohr, the physicist. And Christian Bohr noticed that oxygen transfers from the hemoglobin to the cell walls only in the presence of carbon dioxide. So if your carbon dioxide levels are low, the oxygen does not travel from the blood to the cells as efficiently. So by pausing at the end of that exhale, you raise your carbon dioxide levels a little bit, and you feel more energetic because everything is getting a little bit more oxygen. It's a weird effect. This is also one of the reasons why if you hyperventilate and you blow all of the carbon dioxide out of your lungs, you tend to get kind of dizzy because you're not getting enough oxygen. And your pH balance changes and a bunch of other things. But yeah, you are making your blood carbon dioxide rich, which is interesting because they meaning researchers, doctors, that people who live at high altitudes tend to live longer than people who live at sea level. And they think one of the reasons for this is the more carbon dioxide, less oxygen thing. And so this is a way to create that even at sea level. And it's to me, it's an actual thing. I grew up, my childhood home was 6,800 feet above sea level in the mountains near Ruidoso, New Mexico. Nice mountains, and you know we're up in the Kaibab Plateau, so it's pretty high up. I spent the first part of my life there, and then we moved to California, where we are like 60 feet above sea level, and it was like I felt like I was breathing soup. I remember this as a kid, finally getting to California and going, why am I having a hard time breathing? And it took a couple of weeks to adapt to the richer, thicker atmosphere. So, yes? No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this isn't something that we came up with all on our own. Sufis have been doing this kind of breath for 1,000 years at least. yogis for even longer. I mean, basically in the verses on pranayama and the Yoga Sutras, it describes this. Not to the detail that I just went through, but it talks about the inhale, the exhales, and the pauses. It's like, this is not a new idea. And since it's been around for that long, we can assume that there might be some efficacy to it. Any more thoughts before we go on?
Malou and Roland, yeah, go for it.
What are the most common ways to get this wrong?
Say again?
He said, what are the most common ways to get this wrong? Well, Jonathan brought up one very common way of breathing, and that's to do the active inhale and the passive exhale. So that's a big one, I'd say.
But you know what the most common way is to get this wrong? Noor can tell us because she did it. Tell us about that, Noor. Think back into your past.
To hold my breath, either on, to just kind of like suck in air and just hold it and not let go, which was pressurizing, as we talked about earlier, and it created a lot of stress in my body. So basically it was just not breathing, it was not allowing my body to relax.
And that's very common. And the other thing that she did was she made it hard. She was like, gotta breathe. Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, when I say we're talking about like, oh, why do I have to do all this extra stuff? Like that's kind of how I was experiencing it, was just kind of like, okay, I have to do this really like bodybuilder type breathing where I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna breathe out. And then it's exhausting. It's not beneficial because you're becoming a try-hard about it, quite frankly. And I didn't know any better. That was the thing.
Yeah, and that is the most common mistake. I'm picking on her because she's here, but I'd say that 65-75% of everybody I've ever taught this to did that at one point in their initial learning. They turned it into effort.
And the reality is it's actually pretty subtle.
Yeah.
I find it quite hard to know when my abdominal muscles are relaxed. I tend to breathe in the belly, but I just don't know where the neutral state of the muscles is.
Take your hands, put them on your belly. Exhale actively. Pull your hands towards your spine using your abdominal muscles. Pause and then relax. And wherever they go back to, when you are at the full extension of your breath, when your breath is like, yeah, there it is, that's where it ends. That's where the relax point is. So using your hands is a great way to find this.
And how hard do I press in?
You don't press it. You don't press hard at all. You just rest your hands there and let them. It's as if they were just lightly glued to your skin.
I mean, my belly muscles, my abdominal muscles. How
hard? Do it comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to actually hear the word hard. I want to hear the word, I'm going to exhale and squeeze in comfortably. When it stops being comfortable, that's where I'm going to stop. As you do this, your abdominal muscles will actually get stronger. Especially if you were to do this all day for one day, your abdominal muscles would be sore the next day. it would be like you did 100 sit-ups. Only you're not using the rectus abdominis, the front muscles. You're using the transverse abdominis, which is like an inner girdle or an inner corset around your organs. And one of the cool things about this is once you really gain control of those muscles, when you breathe, it's like this. You can feel it 360 degrees around you. It's not just the front going in. It's you're literally squeezing as if you were tightening a corset and then relaxing. Now, there is a level of breath beyond this. And it's not usually talked about. The Yoga Sutras talk about it. They give it like 2 lines. My Tai Chi teacher used to talk about it, and that is where you move in such a way that your movement breathes you. And this is, when you finally get this, it's really quite profound. My first Tai Chi teacher said, if you do the form correctly, you should not breathe even once during the form. The movement of the form should breathe you so that when you extend, the air comes in. When you contract, the air goes out. And that's a much higher level of this. This is the baby steps here.
So we have a bunch of remarks and questions in the chat.
Tell me all about them.
Okay, so I'll go more or less in order here. So Sydney says, I think the biggest thing for me in the beginning was rewriting the narrative that the rest or pause at each end, you know, the kind of pendulum swing between exhale and inhale and exhale. Sometimes we get the memo that we think it's supposed to be like a hold, like a clamping down. And again, that's more of a pressurizing. But in what we're talking about today, it really is just a pause. It really is just kind of like that little transition between exhale and inhale. You're just touching in on it for a little bit longer. And then lots of people are agreeing with Sydney. Yes, I had the same experience as Sydney. Now the pause, when I can do it well, is like arriving somewhere rather than doing something, if that makes sense.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to steal that one.
Thank you, Board. And Sydney says that she has also had the experience, similarly, of getting confused about the hold versus a pause. Yes, so Weil says, when breathing like this, am I correct in feeling one's posture become better?
Yes.
And David says that he has experienced that personally, I think, if I understood correctly. Yeah, okay. So then there's that, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, posture, by and large, is supported by one's abdominal muscles. If your core muscles are weak, your posture is going to be bad, no matter what. So if you strengthen, breathing this way strengthens your core, and that makes your posture better, and you will naturally just come up and things will align. It will also get you into the next couple parts of this, which is, we talk about the void practice. And you've learned the void practice just sitting. But the void practice is meant to be done moving.
So before we move on, I just want to make sure we touch on a couple more things.
Yes.
So Aaron is curious about Movements for being breathed.
All right, so next exercise. Find your spine. Move it. Your spine can curve forward and backward and side to side. And we're going to look at the forward backward, convex concave or concave convex. So
yeah, and this is something you can do just sitting here right now.
Yeah. So when I exhale, and when you exhale, allow your shoulders to roll slightly forward. Let everything drop so that your front part becomes concave. When you inhale, let everything come up. Exhale and go concave. Inhale, let everything come up. Now, without exhaling, just relax and let your body go concave and watch what happens. The air goes out. When you bring everything up, the air comes in. That's what I'm talking about. The air will come out and go in when the body makes it, when the body moves in a certain way. And I don't know how to teach the walking practices across Zoom because there's no place for me to walk. Might have to do a video on this at some point with Nora out there with the camera going, no, don't walk that way. But there is a way of walking that actually takes the natural tendency for this movement, the flexation and wave of the spine, and allows it to happen in the walk so that the walk breathes you. And it's a very important part of our practice for those of us who are really into it. So I will figure out how to do this. If we were doing a real, a non-virtual retreat, what is a non-virtual retreat?
What is that anymore? I don't know.
There must be a word for it. An in-person retreat, we would spend an hour a day practicing our walking. Not all at once because you get bored, but practice it for 10 minutes, take a 5-minute break, practice it for 10 minutes, take a 5-minute break, do that for an hour. That has always been a part of our tradition's retreats, is the walking exercise. So is that useful, Erin?
Yes. So people have said they've gotten this from other more, structured practices, like Jayesh mentions Surya Namaskar.
Oh yeah, Surya Namaskara should be done exactly like this. Yeah, that's the sun salutation, which is like the core movement pattern of yoga.
Yep.
And if you look at it, it's designed to breathe you.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. So.
Oh, Aslam Khan is here. Wow. Yeah. And Sydney mentions the Tibetan rites.
Oh yeah. Yeah, mostly when they do what are called the Tibetan rites, they never talk about breathing, or they do a weird kind of breathing, but this applies to that. That's something else that people can do. For the yogic movements, if you learn nothing else, learning Surya Namaskara and the 5 Tibetan rites will give you 98% of everything that physical movement needs to give you for recovering.
So, there we go. Some good examples. Thank you. But again, this is stuff that can be done just sitting in your chair, you know. Like we were saying from the beginning, this is not necessarily stuff you have to go out of your way to experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have my seat here set up so that I can literally do this while I'm sitting at the computer so that my spine does not scream at me when I stand up.
All right. So,
And there are like big movements that you can do. Scott Sonnen's program Be Breathed will give you some big crazy movements with rolling back and forth and stuff to do this, which are great fun when you're young and spry. So, the void practice, which again is based in the breath. You can't do the void practice very well without the breath. And it's something that you don't need to take time out of your day to do. You're sitting in your room, you do the void practice. You're walking down the street, you do the void practice. As a matter of fact, that's a great time to do the void practice because you're going to see things that you never saw before. Driving your car, you can do the void practice. I discovered early on that if I'm driving, doing my void practice while I'm driving makes it much easier for me to slip in and out of traffic because I'm paying attention to the places where I need to go, which is where the cars aren't. And there are the walking practices that we mentioned.
someone is saying, can you please explain the void practice? Jayesh is saying that.
Okay, the void practice is one of our basic practices. It causes you to change your focus from things to space. And it's described in a couple, 3-4 different videos that we've done here, so you can look them up and go through the entire thing. We do have the Void Practice 2.0. I'll send you a link to a video that we did on it that is just specifically doing that practice. If you don't get it in the by tomorrow, nag me. You have my permission to nag me for it because we get confused. It's easy to get confused. So, the upshot of this is that in our way, there is not practice in life. There is life in practice, practice in life. It's one thing, it's not two. This is the way of the sly man. This is the fourth way. This is the way of doing your work and being in the world at the same time. We say, khalwat dar anjuman, solitude in the crowd, to be inwardly in your practice and outwardly in the world. And for us, that's important because while we will do little retreats, our way is not a way of retreat. We do not withdraw from the world to do our practice. We sit in the middle of the marketplace and do our practice. So,
sometimes
there you go.
Doing our practice, just, you know, doing everyday things. You can even do it while having a conversation with someone. It is that subtle.
Yes. or while doing the dishes. That's how
Yeah.
I learned to not hate doing the dishes, is by doing my practice while I'm doing the dishes. I have not learned to do that with folding clothes yet. I still hate folding clothes.
That's my department right now.
Yeah.
So.
But you do it so much better than
Yep. Well, you know.
my idea of folding clothes is shirt.
Yeah. We're not having that. But divide and conquer. That's how it works around here.
Yep. Yeah. I wash, she folds.
Did you want to say any more about walking meditation?
Um,
Or did you pretty much cover it?
well, there is just as people breathe in all sorts of different ways that are not good for them, people walk in all sorts of different ways that are not good for them. A lot of people walk by throwing their leg out and slamming their heel into the ground. They run that way too, which is even worse. But there is a way of walking that allows you to shift your weight in such a way that you are always landing over the forward foot. And the rear foot is extended but relaxed. And gravity does a quarter of the work. Your tendons do half the work, and your muscles do the other quarter. You understand the difference between muscles and tendons, right? Muscles contract. That's what they do. That's the only thing that they do, is they contract. Tendons stretch. They're like rubber bands that are attached to your muscles and your bones. And they stretch, and they store energy in that stretch, and then they release by contracting. The interesting thing about tendons is they don't use any calories to do this. They don't use any water to do this. So if you want to maintain your energy, you learn to use your tendon strength in efficient ways. And we see this in some cultures, often in cultures that do not wear structured shoes. The place that you see it in India, especially if you get outside of the cities. You see it I saw it a lot in East Africa, in Tanzania and Kenya, because the most common shoe there is the flip-flop, or the tire sandal, a sandal made from an old tire. So completely unstructured, and people have beautiful posture and beautiful walking. They don't slam their heels into the ground because it hurts. If you're wearing over-structured American shoes, you can slam your bones together all you want. And that's what you're doing. Every time you throw your foot forward and then fall into it like that, you are putting a huge shock into your ankles and knees and hips. If you learn to walk correctly, you don't look like, my example is always an American, because I get to see them all the time. And that's where I first started learning this. I had first learned about this from my grandfather, my father's father. He and I were out looking for a couple of steers that had kind of wandered off. And we went up this wash, a couple miles from the house. A wash is a kind of a dry creek bed. A creek is a little stream of water. I'm using all of these words that are kind of, they're not common in a lot of places. But anyway, we're going up there, and he sees some footprints, human footprints. And he says, white man has been here. And I look at him and I say, grandfather, how can you tell me that that's a white man? And he says, easy. White men walk like ducks. Indians walk like humans. And it's true. If you grew up wearing very, very light footwear to no footwear, that was me. You could not keep me in shoes one moment longer than I had to be. You stride with your feet forward. People of European descent who wear heavily structured shoes, their feet turn out like this, and they're walking like this.
They so do.
Yeah, and that's because their legs are not strong enough to support their weight, so they turn their feet out so that the bones take up the support rather than the muscles and the tendons, as they should. If your posture is correct and your feet don't have a severe turnout, then every step loads your tendons. Every step, gravity stretches that tendon to give you the energy to spring back. This is weird to talk about, huh? I mean, this is one of the things that since that day, and I was like 10 years old, since that day, I have watched how people walk. It made me very, very aware of it. Everywhere I've gone in the world, I've watched people walk. And everywhere is different. When I lived in Sweden, Swedes walk everywhere. At least they did back in, the late 70s and early 80s. It's like you walk, maybe you take the underground, maybe you take a ferry, but mostly you walk. And it shows in how people use their body. You go to London and they walk completely differently. Totally differently than Swedes. Londoners walk like they have a stick up their ass. Forgive my French, but...
You're French in Britain. Yeah. Nancy, were you going to share a thought?
Yeah. If you notice that you're walking with your feet turned out, what do you do to start improving it?
Two things. Consciously work on turning your feet in a little bit. Not a lot, not at first, just a little bit. And change your shoes. And sharpen, strengthen your legs. Board had to take off. Adios.
Because I can remember when I was a kid, my feet turned out, and it was suggested to me that I turn my feet straight. And it felt so bad, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Incremental change. Don't do it all at once. If you do it all at once, it hurts.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Aaron says, one thing that helped me was trying to walk like I was on two rails going straight forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that will actually help you a little bit, is you get a 4x4, or whatever that is in metric in the rest of the world, which is a 4-inch by 4-inch piece of board, and you put it on the ground and you just walk on top of it. You can't walk with your feet turned out because you fall off. But that keeps your feet in too much of a line. Your feet should not be in one line like this. There should be a little bit of this.
Yeah,
So the rails thing.
That makes me think of two other ways of walking. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna use my hands as feet. Like,
Yeah.
so there's this. I mean, my dad
Mm-hmm.
has always kind of walked like that. I've always noticed that and thought it was interesting. I sometimes walk like this with my feet turned inward.
Pigeon-toed.
Yeah.
You don't do that too much.
Yeah, not anymore. Not so much now. Yeah. And then also there's like runway walking where it's like
Yeah.
you do this cross-legged thing.
Yeah, that's very artificial and it's terrible for your balance.
Mm.
Yeah, that is very good advice, Aaron.
Aaron says, thinking of feeling the rail between my big toe and next toe is really key for me. Interesting.
Yeah. So, this is what we have for you today for the idea of continual practice. Practice that you do not need to set aside any time to do. There is no time excuse for this. You can't say, I have no time to breathe, right? This is a statement that doesn't make sense. And since you have to breathe, why not turn it into practice? So, questions, thoughts, last comments? Anybody want to
There's
yell at us? Yes.
This is one
What-
thing.
Okay, why don't we have Malou and Roland and then we'll have you again, Nancy.
There's a breathing void practice, right? Where I'm going into longer and longer exhale pauses.
Yes.
And when I do that, I have a problem with overdoing the exhale pause in the beginning of doing that, and then kind of being out of breath and having trouble with that. And I don't really know how to pace that properly.
So, for a month, you just do a 3-beat pause.
Okay.
Next month, increase it to 5 beats. The month after that, increase it to 7 beats. In other words, slow way down.
Mm-hmm.
There is no rush.
Yeah. I think people who tend to be really ambitious or passionate about things like this tend to go a little overboard. So it's okay to slow it down.
For me, is it that I've done Wim Hof breathing for many years, and I hold my breath sometimes for like 4 or 5 minutes. So it seems like I can easily hold it, and I don't notice that it's a problem when I hold it. But then in the breaths after that, I only notice it. So it makes sense to just have a little limit there and slowly increase it over time.
Yeah. Yeah, the Wim Hof stuff is in, I think, I don't know all that much about it. I've watched a few of his video courses, and it's pretty different than this. You know, I don't think that he can sustain that, or at least his students can sustain that all day long. This, you can sustain all day long. You can breathe like this from the moment you wake up. And when I wake up, I like to do that 3 deep inhales where I'm stretching my lung tissues out. And then I'll just spend the day breathing in using the fundamental breath. And I don't have to do anything else. And interestingly enough, I can produce a lot of the same heat effects as he does. I don't know if I can sit in an ice tub for an hour, but when I lived in Michigan, I frequently walked around barefoot in the snow wearing shorts and a t-shirt, just because it was too much hassle to get dressed to go from the house to the dojo. And Noor will tell you that basically my hands and feet are almost never cold. I just sit and radiate heat.
Pretty much.
And this comes from the breath more than anything else. I suspect that if I did it Wim Hof's way, I would probably produce more heat, but so far I don't have a lot of need to. So.
Did you
As
want to
far
add something? Yeah, sorry. Go
as
for
far
it.
as I understand the practice, that this sort of breathing that Wim Hof does is not necessarily meant to produce heat necessarily. So it makes sense what you're describing. As far as I understand it, he's producing the heat more by being in the breath and being present rather than doing the breath holding itself. This seems to be more like a conditioning practice as far as I picked it
That
up.
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I learned the whole how to be warm from back in 1967. I ran across a book called Tibetan Yoga and Secret Doctrines, translated by H.G. Evans Wentz, and they had the yoga of the psychic heat. And I practiced that until I could do it. And it was more visualization than breath, which was interesting. And when you're a young hippie, it's a very useful thing because sometimes you don't have as many clothes as you would like. Any other thoughts and questions? Nancy, you had a thought.
Yeah, I was wondering if you know of any people who got all the way to non-dual awareness by just doing this during ordinary life kind of work.
Yes. All of my teachers.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what this is designed to do. And there are lots of ways to do it. My buddy Lawrence, he's like, if he were any more non-dual, he would probably just turn inside out and disappear into the void. And he spent most of his time in the world. I mean, he did hang out in Zen monasteries from time to time, but that was just a weird perversion of his.
A weird perversion, though. But yeah, I mean, for us, being in the world is important, and being awake is important, so finding ways to keep those two things together is important. And as we can see, yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of learning, but ultimately these things are so easy to do just as a matter of course.
Yeah. So the next time you think, I don't have enough time to do practice, just realize that you're still breathing. Wael, you've been so quiet. What do you think?
With lots of head nodding.
I've been listening very carefully, and I was just wondering if there's a connection between consciously breathing the way you are describing and not just breathing unconsciously, and detachment from the things that we see. I'm just thinking and connecting a little more to the Yoga Sutras, where detaching from the things that we see allow us to be more of the witness. So I'm just trying to think, is there a connection between how you describe breathing consciously? From what I'm getting from this is when we're awake to the beauty of how we breathe, how does that help with detaching from things that just consume us, I suppose?
They say, and by they I mean all of the teachers that I've ever known, and I believe this to be true in my own experience, is that as long as you maintain this breath, negative emotion has great difficulty in getting hold of you. this form of breathing leads to the Sanskrit word is shanta, same root as shanti, which means peace. And it's one of the 9 rasas, the 9 fundamental proto-emotions. There's no real good English way to describe this because it's so much more than that. But Shanta, according to my teacher, is the resting place for human awareness. When you are in this state of calmness, tranquility, peace, and awareness, you are in the natural state. And he used to say that everything else is a journey from this state. And he used to say, it's okay to take a journey. It's all right. Take a trip. Enjoy yourself. Just remember to come back. So all of the other states, anger, disgust, love, joy, all of that, they're journeys away from this perfect tranquility. And this breath, the fundamental breath, helps you move to that state of inner peace and tranquility and calmness. It starts with calmness, and then it expands from there.
So would you say, Mushtaq, that the breathing you're describing in Sufi Islamic terms is the breath of the self at ease, النفس المطمئنة?
Yes. Yeah, it's so much easier to just say that, isn't it? Except that we now have to define all of that. But that's for a later day.
I'm taking notes. Don't worry.
Take notes, yes.
Thanks, Weil. Did I see you unmute yourself, Jayesh? Just curious. If not, that's fine. I'm just wanting to pay attention to everyone. David, how's it going?
Going good. Definitely have to change the heel walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't beat yourself up, you know? It's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, everybody does this, so of course it's just kind of seen as normal. I mean, in our culture, at least. But, you know, now that you know, that empowers you to do something about it. Yeah. How about you, Sydney? How's it going?
Good. I've experienced this breath change a lot in my life. So it's always fun to talk about.
Good.
Yeah. How is because you're going through some interesting physical changes right now, how is that affecting your breath practice?
You know, I can't rest for as long. As my belly grows, it just kind of needs less time in that space. But it really helps me to always stay in this peaceful tranquility. That's the main thing that I'm working with this practice right now, is just doing my best to stay peaceful and calm.
Sweet.
Good.
Funny, what do you think?
I really like this breathing practice, and I've done it for quite some time. Something that I was thinking about is how when I moved from doing like a specific time for my practices to actually incorporating them during the day, I felt like I needed to remind myself of that a lot. Yeah, especially like in the beginning, to actually, you know, pay attention, stay awake, and actually do the breathing and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing that pops up for me at the moment.
So If I'm understanding you correctly, it's kind of like without that structure of like sitting down time, like you tend to lose track.
Yeah, it's kind of like the day goes by itself, and I feel like sometimes I'm not being present and actually taking the time to just like stop myself and maybe asking myself, you know, am I awake or am I asleep? And then bring back the breathing with that. That's something that I just need to remind myself of throughout the day, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's a very simple way of doing it, you know, like as opposed to, okay, I'm going to set like a 20-minute timer to breathe a certain way, like sitting down, taking time away from whatever else may be required that day, but just doing that check-in, which just takes moments of, am I awake or am I asleep right now? Or how is my breathing? Things like that. It's just a check-in.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really useful to set up reminders. One of the things I love about being in Middle Eastern countries is that you're reminded 5 times a day to do your practices. And that's incredibly useful.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why we can't do something like that no matter where we are.
Yep.
You know, Christians used to do that too. The day was marked by the times when you stopped and did the various prayers. But we have lost that. Now we have coffee breaks. Almost as good.
Yep. For those of us who do drink coffee.
That's okay. I drink all your coffee.
All the coffee for me. All right. Do we have any other thoughts or questions? Would anyone like to share who hasn't shared yet? I think we got to hear from everybody, though, which is nice.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Then we should probably wrap it up because we've gone for a while. Yeah, we only get to do this once a month, so we tend to go a little bit longer because we miss you guys.
Yep, and plus we're not starving or falling asleep or, you know, so this is a great time. But, yeah, I think that about wraps it up. And I will just add again that I hope to see many of you, if not all of you, during the retreat. We are going to have alternating times for our group sessions for that, you know, our support sessions. They're going to be on Saturday nights and Saturday mornings. So that's going to be the 6:30 and the 10:30 alternating. 6:30 p.m., 10:30 a.m.
Yeah, and everything will be recorded, so you won't miss anything.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do that in the past, but I guess we're going to do that this time.
Yeah, we did that in the past.
Did we? In any case,
we did.
That's going to be privately shared to people in the who have signed up for the retreat. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So that's all I've got to wrap up with.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
So
well,
let me switch to Brady Bunch mode. And we can all wave and say goodbye.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you next time.